So now I'll start to do some special tests, and we're going to go over this a little bit here. But for us, I want to look at valgus stress testing so we can stress the ligament. I want to look at the bone a little bit with some testing for valgus extension overload. And then we're going to look at both the muscle and the nerve. Again, those 4 things we talked about earlier, let's at least try to rule out as many of them as we can. So the first thing we'll start with is the ligament, right? Especially with him, which we kind of know this is shaping up to be some sort of a ligament issue. So we'll start this exam sequence, and I actually do it in this order. There's 4 tests I like to do. One is just a milking maneuver. That's what the physicians call it because they do it seated. I'll show you how I do it just laying on your back, but a milking maneuver. Then I do a milking maneuver but in pronation. Then we'll do a moving valgus stress test, and then I'll do a prone valgus stress test. And for me, I almost think these kind of slowly build. So meaning like if you have symptoms on the first test, on just a milking maneuver, it's probably going to be a really good sign that the rest are going to be a problem. But sometimes we see people that don't have a lot of discomfort with the milking, and maybe I'll pronate the forearm and then they'll feel it. Or maybe I have to do a moving valgus. So for me, this is a sequence that kind of builds on itself, okay? So again, the first one, this is called a milking maneuver. So again, it's just me bringing him into passive external rotation. But you want to aggressively get there. So you can see I'm being a little bit more aggressive than I would with just passive range of motion. And I'm just bringing it into external rotation. I'm saying, do you feel any discomfort with that? That is a milking maneuver. That is a very indicative test for UCL injuries. 2 is what I'm going to do is the same thing, but now I'm going to just pronate the forearm, which causes a little bit more gapping at the medial elbow, and then bring him back into external rotation and say, do you feel that? And oftentimes this is a little bit more symptomatic than just doing it regular. And then 3rd is a milking maneuver. So you can see now what I'm doing is I'm bringing them into external rotation and I'm flexing and extending their arm in that position. And that tends to really light somebody up that's having some discomfort at a very specific range of motion. So again, a milking maneuver, a pronated milking maneuver, and now the moving valgus test. Now, traditional stability testing is doing a valgus stress test. Again, a lot of textbooks, a lot of physicians will just do this seated with their hand in their lap. For me, I like to put them in the prone position because what I can do here is I can really lock out the arm, I can lock out the body, and make sure I'm just doing a nice stress test on the medial elbow. And you can see this looks a lot like an MCL test for a knee, right over the edge of a table. I want to do the same thing for the elbow. And for me, I can get right on there, get a nice little torque. I can do it at 30 degrees. I can do it at about 0 degrees to really test that. Now, keep in mind, if you don't see a lot of UCL injuries, this is a very small joint with a very small amount of gapping, like millimeters sometimes. So you're not going to necessarily feel a huge gapping like you would with the knee, but it's going to cause some discomfort. And obviously, the bigger the tear, you might see some gapping or feel some gapping, but realize that for me, it's more a pain provocation type test than it is anything else, okay?